so. Today we'll be hearing from the Minister of Finance and the Public Service, who will conclude the budget debate for the financial year. I trust that the Minister will, as always, deliver a well thought out presentation and that we all will be very attentive. I wish to welcome members of her constituency from St. Andrew Eastern, whom I see in the gallery here to support our Minister of Finance. I welcome also those joining us via the various social media platforms, particularly PBCJ Live, and for all who are joining us generally in the gallery. Welcome to today's sitting. I hope you will have a wonderful time here today. Call of the roll, Clark.
Mr. Clark. Here. Mr. Green. Present. Dr. Holness. Dr. Chang. Mrs. Williams. Mr. Bartlett. Ms. Grange. Dr. Tufton. Mr. Mackenzie.
We not hear them answer.
Mr. Montague. Mr. Vaz. Mr. Chuck. Mr. Charles Jr. Mr. Morgan. Ambassador Marks. Mr. Samuda. Dr. Wheatley. Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn. Mr. Terry Long. Mr. Whittle. Mrs. Dalrymple Filbert. Ms. Morrison.
Hi, O'Neill.
Ms. Lee. Mr. Donovan Williams. Mr. Main. Ms. Crawford. Mr. Delroy Williams.
I bet him I watch Parliament.
Mr. Sivright.
The year of flavor I said today, you know.
Mr. Brown. Dr. Brownberg. Mr. Buchanan. Mr. Bunting. Ms. Burchell. Dr. Campbell. Mr. Cousins. Mr. Crawford. Ms. Daly. Dr. Dawes. Mr. Goulding. Mr. Gordon. Mr. Hales. Mr. Hines. Mr. Hilton. Mr. Jackson. Ms. Jess. Mrs. Malahoo Fort. Mrs. Miller Bennett. Mr. Morris. Mrs. Nita Garvey. Mr. Newell. Mr. Paulwell. Mr. Phillips. Ms. Perkis. Mr. Robertson. Mr. Robinson. Dr. Russell. Mr. Fox.
Yeah, so we just have to watch because whatever they say or do, we still are going to impact by it. So when we say we don't want to hear, we have to still listen. Because we want to hear what she come say, you know.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, we could go straight through the agenda to public business.
Thank you, House Leader. Statement by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House are the following: Jamaica Survey of Living Conditions 2023, the Insurance Amendment of 20th Schedule Regulations 2026 under the Insurance Act, the Pension Superannuation Funds and Retirement Schemes, Registration, Licensing and Reporting Amendment Regulations 2026, and this resolution under the Pension Superannuation Funds and Retirement Schemes Act. And finally, the Conch Export Levy, Rate of Levy Order 2026, and this resolution under the Conch Export Levy Act. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. Questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, public business. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, today we will close the budget debate. We will have a presentation from our Minister of Finance. We have gone through the opening and the response.
Yes, I'm
from the
here,
opposition,
but it's true when me done, me go on my bed, me not get to watch it. Me say, I look a clip of it
What
today.
does cinnamon do for high blood pressure? Let me show you. Here it is, page 32. This recipe is so easy.
This is now, Madam Speaker, the proverbial icing on the cake. So, Madam Speaker,
Which ice the
we
pancake
turn
with more
over
lying
to
and
our extremely
criminal
competent
thief.
Minister of Finance, the Honorable Fayval Williams, Minister of Finance and the Public Service.
House Leader, read time.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the time be suspended to enable the Minister of Finance to speak without interruption.
Yes, members, the question is that it's time limits be suspended to allow for the completion of the debate by the Minister of Finance to close the budget. Those in favor, those against, the ayes have it. Minister?
You all of them in the parliament, and Rosie not tell no lie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have come to the end of another budget debate, another significant milestone in Jamaica's democratic history. I believe Jamaicans will agree that this was one of the most engaging budget debates. As we close the fiscal year 2025-26, the year of the Category 5 Hurricane Melissa, we say thank you to the Almighty for safe passage. We know that many Jamaicans have been buffeted and bruised by Hurricane Melissa, and some have died. We mourn with the families. This government remains committed to helping survivors stand back up on their feet. Thank you, Jamaica. Thank you, Jamaicans from all walks of life, for your continued faith and confidence in this government, and for your patience as together we forge our way through the catastrophe that befell us. Madam Speaker, let me pause again to acknowledge my husband, who's listening to me now for the second time. He supports me every step of the way. Our children, my brothers, sisters, and many other family members. Of course, my faithful constituents from St. Andrew Eastern, the Financial Secretary and the staff at the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service.
We're tired of them, Betty. We're tired of them.
And of course, the people from my hometown, Ty Dixon, Jamaicans all. Madam Speaker, we look to the new fiscal year 2026-27, and beyond, with great optimism for reconstruction, growth, resurgence in the economy, and in the lives of all Jamaicans. I know that whatever station we are in life,
PLI them a come with, but
carry
listen for
within
them.
us a desire for better, to achieve more.
Boy, Tikiana, me feel sorry for you.
This is the commitment of this government to work diligently so that all Jamaicans, not some, all Jamaicans can achieve their full potential. Thank you for your significant engagement during this budget period, our democracy is stronger for it. I am more energized to do your work, the work of the people of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the cornerstones to move us from resilience to resurgence have been laid. The National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority NARA will enable execution of resilient infrastructure projects at a scale and speed this country has never seen before. Coupled with NARA is FAST Jamaica, facilitated acceleration of strategic transformation to fast-track strategic priority investments of US $150 million or more that can commence implementation within a year and can be integrated into the NARA network of projects. Madam Speaker, the cornerstones to move us from resilience to resurgence have been set and driven by the builder himself, Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Jamaicans can expect a new and different Jamaica to unfold over the next 3 to 5 years, Madam Speaker, right before our very eyes. And it will be Black River, rebuilding forward smarter and better. Hopewell and Lucy Bypass and Lucy Harbor development. Montego Bay, revitalizing our tourism capital. Falmouth, a blueprint for climate resilient coastal communities. North-South Highway Extension Project. Port Antonio, birthplace of Caribbean tourism reimagined. St. Thomas Port, Port of Kingston, building the region's premier logistics hub, the government campus, National Hero Circle, Kingston Public Hospital, rebuilt to modern international standards with resilience, continuity of care, and disaster readiness embedded to its core. Verdun Field Light Project, roads. Not only will we have new corridors for agricultural, industrial, and tourism development, but Madam Speaker, we will ensure no community is ever again isolated when disaster strikes. Housing, the most ambitious housing program in the NHT's history, will be rolled out, covering developments in St. Catherine, Trelawney, Manchester, Clarendon, Westmoreland, St. Thomas, St. Mary, Kingston, and beyond. We will unlock urban potential.
Yeah, tap up the screen, man. Tap up the
Blighted
screen.
urban spaces into vibrant community, featuring urban gardens, parks, and recreational areas accessible to all. We will have thriving centers for local businesses, arts, and culture, breathing new life into communities. We will create affordable housing and service centers that provide dignity and stability for vulnerable residents. Madam Speaker, I say again, Jamaicans can indeed expect a new and different Jamaica to unfold over the next 3 to 5 years, right before our very eyes.
Now go, sir. Top shot fart.
Madam Speaker,
Foolishness. Sit down on the line.
again, we have a builder with vision, a builder with integrity and energy, and a builder with a proven track record. Madam Speaker, the builder did not just give the vision, he gave a blueprint. But more importantly,
And that you take so long for come on. You take nearly 1 hour for them coach you where you have to come
that
say.
vision will be financed. The US $6.7 billion package secured from our international partners, the World Bank, IADB, the IMF,
So it all pay back.
CAF, and CBD with 2.4 billion
Oh,
of
it have a
that
payback.
earmarked to crowd in the private sector is a big part of that financing. Madam Speaker, this was a coherent package. International financing is in place. Never before in the history of Jamaica have we seen such a big financing package. Madam Speaker, of significance, our local financial markets, with the many reforms I announced in my opening budget speech, will have the greatest opportunity to participate in the rebuilding of Jamaica. Our Jamaica, rebuilt the way all of us want it to be, strong, resilient, and providing for the growth and development of industries and the people of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, I announced a raft of reforms in the financial sector that are expected to unlock capital for the reconstruction and resurgence of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, I wish to provide an update on pension reform. In addition to lifting of the limit for pension funds from 5% to 7.5% in the first instance, and then 10% by April of next year, to allow them to participate in local corporate and infrastructure financing. Madam Speaker, I promised the pension industry the implementation of phase 2 of the pension reform, which includes long-awaited changes, such as portability, meaning when you leave a company and go to another company, your pension can follow you. Madam Speaker, I want to say to the President of the Pension Industry Association of Jamaica, I read your article in one of our daily newspapers. Like you, I want the pension reforms phase 2 to be implemented. This is way past overdue. However, I want to say to you, you will be pleased to see how far along is the legislation, and I will schedule a follow-up meeting with you. Madam Speaker, in addition to the raft of financial sector initiatives designed to unlock capital while maintaining the guardrails on risk, is the government's commitment to implement the public procurement set-asides framework, which I announced in my opening budget speech. I'm happy to say, Madam Speaker, that the Public Procurement Commission, the PPC, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, the Ministry of Industry, Investments and Commerce, and the Development Bank of Jamaica will be coordinating to host a public meeting to prepare small businesses for government contracts. The meeting is designed to help entrepreneurs understand and access government procurement opportunities. The public meeting will show our entrepreneurs how to qualify. They will hear about registration and compliance, and they will hear directly from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, the Public Procurement Commission, the Development Bank of Jamaica, and the Ministry of Industry, Investments and Commerce, Minister Aubin Hill, and the Small Business Association. Madam Speaker, the executives of the Small Business Association came to see me in my office at the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service in January of this year, specifically on this matter of the public procurement set-asides framework. Madam Speaker, the opposition spokesman on finance made much regarding prior announcements on MSME procurement framework. He even came with newspaper articles. Well, opposition spokesman on finance, it is now being implemented. It is being implemented. I am pleased to note that since I met with the leadership of the Small Business Association, the Public Procurement Commission has been working on establishing and maintaining a verified list of qualifying small business suppliers so that they can easily properly identify eligible businesses when applying the set-asides provision. Work is underway. So, Madam Speaker, as a government, we say to small business owners, get ready. March 26th at 1 p.m. is the date, and Exim Bank's meeting room is the place. We're calling all micro enterprises with annual turnover below 15 million and small businesses with turnover between 15 million to 75 million to learn about the government's procurement process. This is a big deal, Madam Speaker. To think of it, Madam Speaker, we may have to open this meeting to the online platforms because I've already been receiving positive interest from small businesses from across Jamaica. Madam Speaker, I must confess, this is an announcement that gives me great joy to share details about, because now a company does not have to be big to bid. A company does not have to be big to bid for government procurement. The small contractor can now bid on projects within her company's capability. The tech startup can now have a fair chance to bid at digitizing records for our ministries, departments, and agencies. This is what this opportunity looks like under this administration, Madam Speaker. Small businesses will finally have a chance at government's procurement. Madam Speaker, it is no secret that I want to see more and more companies listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange to create an even more vibrant market and open possibilities for more of our local businesses. I am pleased to announce, Madam Speaker, that the Jamaica Stock Exchange has established a stock market sandbox, which is a simulated market environment designed to prepare businesses for the realities of operating as a publicly listed entity.
Then she
The
come back with
sandbox
building
will
and building
expose
and building again. And that
prospective
she come back with?
to the reporting obligations, corporate governance standards, and
joking.
regulatory expectations they will face once listed. This will be available starting April 17, 2026. Madam Speaker, the sandbox will provide a low-risk setting that allows companies to learn, adapt, and to build capacity before entering the live market. This innovation is expected to significantly improve the quality and readiness of businesses entering the micro and the junior market, reduce compliance failures post-listing, and create a sustained, well-prepared issue and development pipeline for years to come. Madam Speaker, while this is happening, the Jamaica Stock Exchange is currently working in close partnership with the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, JB.
Tai Chi walking is a low-impact, hormone-friendly method that helps women lose weight gently and consistently. You strengthen your...
Thank you, Minister Grange, has been identified as primary candidates. These businesses have already demonstrated a level of operation.
She come back with the slide them again.
And the growth readiness.
The people are real joker, you know. Unless it's a pay a joker around the country. Unless see that. Unless it's a joker around the country.
And I look forward to sharing more on their successes as the program develops.
You know who not talking, right?
Madam Speaker, I now take this opportunity to enlighten those who might have doubted our ability to navigate the world of digital trade. To them, I say the following. Firstly, many persons may not know, but Jamaica is the current chair of the UN Task Team on Digitalization under the UN Committee of Experts on Business and Trade Statistics. This means the committee provides guidance, coordinates and standardizes business and trade statistics, focuses on areas like globalization, digitalization, and statistical capacity building in member states. And this work is being led by one of our very own Jamaicans through the Bank of Jamaica. This
You know
is
well, not
a
chat.
very big deal. Madam Speaker, Jamaicans should be proud to know
You sleeping hard. With the bed, me lay down in there. Me make sure I put this at the right where me can lay down. Like when you me sit down up till my back at me. I lay down and watch.
Handbook on measuring digital trade, which included a case study.
Alright, I know then give Rosie 48 hours for retract. And me want to say if Rosie a retract.
The team's work looked at issues such as digital trade, e-commerce, and cross-border digital services. Much of the work the group is doing internationally focuses on the measurement issues governments around the world face when designing policies on digital trade and digital taxation. Madam Speaker, as the global economy becomes increasingly digital,
One Rosie we
countries
say, yeah.
must adapt how they understand and respond to new forms of economic activity.
I have a feeling that she not apologize to me. I watch the world go on.
Accounts for a substantial
She
share
out fame.
of Jamaica's GDP, and an increasing portion of this activity is taking place through digital and cross-border channels. This is not simply a matter of getting revenues, but of ensuring that our economic systems are properly equipped to understand these developments. We're therefore strengthening
The economy not growing at 10 years, but one it
measure
growing at 5 years.
and interpret digital economic activities so that our policies remain fair, balanced, and grounded in accurate information. Jamaica has provided global leadership on measuring digital economic activity. Having laid that context, Madam Speaker, let me say that the definition of digital trade has evolved to now where digital trade is defined as being digitally ordered and digitally delivered. Number two, digitally ordered and physically delivered. And number three, physically ordered and digitally delivered. Madam Speaker, definition number two, which is digitally ordered and physically delivered, are goods that we know that come into Jamaica through our ports and are already subject to taxes and duties. Obviously, these will not be the subject of any further taxes and duties.
Our
as a result
branch, you
of
know,
the
we
revenue
should.
measures. Madam Speaker, let me say it clearly. Digitally ordered and physically delivered trade was not included in our revenue measures. Or is However, Madam Speaker, for measurement purpose, that is, when measuring digital trade in order to know how large is Jamaica's digital economy, definition number two is included. So, Madam Speaker, the size of Jamaica's digital economy is larger than the portion on which revenue measures are calculated. This definition that includes 1, 2, and 3 as per the screen is used by many countries, including Jamaica. Madam Speaker, in my opening budget presentation, I did speak to the impact on our local retailers of the competition they face with untaxed items coming onto our shores. The opposition spokesman on finance, rightly so, pointed to the increase in the de minimis threshold that this government implemented and asked if this was not policy contradiction. Madam Speaker, you will recall that as of April 1, 2024, the de minimis threshold in Jamaica was increased to US $100. Goods imported for personal or commercial use with a free on board or FOB value of $100 or less are exempt from custom duties and related taxes. If the value exceeds US $100, duties apply to the total CIF. And CIF means cost, insurance, and freight. Madam Speaker, let me put it straight to Jamaicans. When the de minimis threshold was increased from US $50 to US $100, it was not expected that we would see splitting up of orders to avoid taxes and duties. By splitting up, I mean the instances in which if you're ordering from the same vendor, instead of making one order, you make multiple orders. Take a scenario in which you're ordering 2 items and they cost $100 each. That's a total of US $200. Packaged and shipped in one package of $200, there would be tax on the CIF. Instead, what we're seeing is a splitting of the orders to fall within the US 100 de minimis allotment and an increase, Madam Speaker. Sometimes I could characterize it as a deluge in the number of US 100 and undervalued packages. Madam Speaker, the unforeseen consequence is that no revenues flow to the Treasury. And I must add, Madam Speaker, that is quite regrettable and was simply not the intent of the de minimis policy. Again, Madam Speaker, forgive me if I'm being pedantic, but it is imperative that everyone understands what I've shared. And when I draw a reference to our local retailers, it is because they are feeling the impact of untaxed goods coming in. And one way, they are feeling the impact. So, Madam Speaker, to the opposition spokesman on finance, I trust this explanation clarifies your assertion. Madam Speaker, the leader of opposition and the spokesman on finance both spoke to e-invoicing to generate additional revenues. Thank you for that. I welcome the public discussion on e-invoicing for all the benefits that it will provide, chief among them, improved tax collection and compliance, faster detection of fraud and anomalies, reduced administrative burden, better and timelier data. Madam Speaker, Jamaica has been on a journey in the modernization of tax administration, Jamaica, TAJ. The IDB has been a partner with the TAJ since 2014, when the Revenue Administration Information System, RAISE, began being implemented. Yes, Madam Speaker, the PNP government at the time started the modernization journey for the tax administration, Jamaica. The RAISE system at the time represented a major effort to improve tax compliance, streamline tax collection services, and help Jamaica to transition from a largely manual process to a comprehensive web-based tax administration platform. We on this side, Madam Speaker, have continued that journey to include a significant upgrade of the system by March 2027 to, among other things, make it easier to navigate the TAJ's website. Cabinet approved the procurement recently. Madam Speaker, our journey is set to begin with the scoping work for e-invoicing based on the digital maturity level of the TAJ system.
You top up a screen, no man. Extra something this man do now, and not even a top up a screen.
Have been installed over the years, from e-registry to e-filing to e-payment through to virtual file systems. And those with the check marks are
extra curriculums.
Now, Madam Speaker,
Flavors,
having done all the work
budget
since
school.
2014 to get to this point, the e-invoicing work can now begin. Thank you to the dedicated team at the TAJ It is going to require use of advanced electronic signature, field standardization, meaning how the data is collected, online validation operation modules, invoice verification, and will require technology to be deployed for interconnectivity between the taxpayer system and that of the TAJ. Because, as you can imagine, Madam Speaker, e-invoicing is massively more transactions intensive than anything the TAG has done in its history. Madam Speaker, we expect for e-invoicing to take at least 2 to 3 years to roll out and be fully operational. As you can see from the slide, it has taken other countries with more resources a lot longer to roll out. So we are being very ambitious in our 2 to 3 years time frame expectation. So we would be looking at fiscal year 2028-29 to begin to see a working e-invoicing system in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, contrary to what the opposition spokesman on finance would have us believe, there are no revenues to be earned from e-invoicing that the opposition spokesman on finance could credibly include in the budget for this upcoming fiscal year. Or even the next fiscal year. I don't have time. Madam Speaker, it not go work. But Madam Speaker, let me say unequivocally that I welcome the discourse and the opposition's support and their positive stance for e-invoicing to be implemented in Jamaica with alacrity. I know we don't often see eye to eye on most matters, but on the need to move towards implementation of e-invoices, we can both claim that Jamaica will stand together. So, Madam Speaker, I turn now to the budget that the opposition spokesman on finance put forward. He said that electric invoicing system would deliver $8.6 billion in the upcoming fiscal year. He also, so Madam Speaker, I have to ask, what can go so?
A joke, can I take this thing for?
So, Madam Speaker, I want to say to the opposition spokesman on finance, there are no e-invoicing revenues that can be realistically expected in the upcoming fiscal year 2027, nor might I add in the next fiscal year to replace 8.6 billion of revenue measures. There is no magic bullet of e-invoicing gains that every global expert knows takes years to materialize. So, Madam Speaker, I'm going to exalt that figure, that 8.6 billion. Madam Speaker, this government will not gamble with the future of our country. Madam Speaker, we will not gamble with the future of our country.
If you know that think, you know that think better how you chat.
Points by entrusting the future future of the vulnerable, the continued stability of the Jamaican dollar, the sustainability of our national debt, and hard earned reputation for central government's prudent financial management, on the fantasy of major software upgrade happening overnight. We have, Madam Speaker, we have chosen the path of fiscal responsibility because it is the only credible path that leads to a stable recovery. And that is where we will continue to be, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the issue of digital nomad, the proposal from the spokesman on finance reflects a worthwhile instinct, but it illustrates the difference between identifying a promising concept and presenting a fully developed fiscal instrument. A digital nomad program may well have merit as part of a broader strategy to diversify Jamaica's visitor economy, attract long-term remote workers, and stimulate spending in select sectors. However, it does not yet stand up as a sufficiently robust revenue measure for closing a gap in the upcoming fiscal year 2026-27. Madam Speaker, the issue is not that the idea lacks potential, but that it has been advanced without the level of policy architecture, implementation detail, and fiscal realism required for serious budget planning. Even in a system.
Baby, give me 7 weeks, and I promise you that your voice will shock you. The Vocal Star Academy is back. Last year, I did something that I've never done before. I opened my heart and my studio.
Just caution rather than easy optimism. Thousands of digital nomads were attracted over the period, yet the revenue yield remained relatively modest, underscoring that such programs are better understood as medium-term economic enhancers than immediate fiscal solutions. Madam Speaker, the more thoughtful commentary that has since emerged is therefore correct. The proposal points in an interesting direction, but it requires considerably more work on eligibility, infrastructure, tax treatment, housing implications, health coverage, administrative design, and projected returns before it can credibly be presented as a measure capable of materially strengthening the government's revenue position for the upcoming fiscal year, fiscal 2026-27. So, Madam Speaker, I will also X that figure out for this upcoming fiscal year 2020. Madam Speaker, the opposition spokesman on finance said he would take $1 billion from Factories Corporation. This is a government entity that develops, leases, and manages industrial and commercial real estate throughout Jamaica. The primary goal of Factories Corporation is to drive economic growth by providing the infrastructure needed for businesses to operate. So, I want to ask the opposition spokesman on finance, are you sure you want to take $1 billion out of a company that helps to drive economic growth? No. So I'm going to X out this one as well. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, of all the things the spokesman on finance said, the one that alarmed me the most is that he said he would take, and that was his word, he would take an additional $1 billion from the Bank of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the Bank of Jamaica, by law, Mr. Lawyer, opposition leader, determines the level level of dividends that can reasonably be transferred in any year to the central government. There are strict guidelines in law. It is not advisable that the Minister of Finance calls the Bank of Jamaica and takes an additional $1 billion. So what happens if you need $20 billion, $100 billion, $200 billion? Would you simply take it from the
Hi,
Bank of
Dorothy.
Jamaica?
You're nice in our background. I mean, I want something.
Opposition spokesman on finance, Madam Speaker, that was what obtained in the long days ago when inflation ruled unfettered in Jamaica. In a particular period, let's say 1972 to 1980, Madam Speaker, the Bank of Jamaica became independent on April 15, 2021. It conducts a very sensitive monetary policy free of political interference. And so FYI, you can't just take an additional $1 billion from the Bank of Jamaica, even if you think it won't compromise the institution's core function or its operational capacity. Madam Speaker, it appears the opposition spokesman on finance is telegraphing the intention of the opposition if it ever sits in the seat of government. Madam Speaker, a government cannot simply ask the Bank of Jamaica for funding. The amendments to the Bank of Jamaica Act, which established the inflation targeting regime and central bank independence, places explicit and intrinsic guardrails around how resources can move from Bank of Jamaica to government. Madam Speaker, those Jamaicans who are in business know that only realized profits can be distributed. It is the same for the Bank of Jamaica. Only realized profits can be distributed. And the Bank of Jamaica's capital to monetary liability ratio has to be at least 5% before any profits can be distributed. Madam Speaker, it is important that the opposition understands that only 25% of realized profits are distributed when capital to monetary liability ratio is greater than 5% and less than 8%. All the realized profits can only be distributed when the capital to monetary liability ratio is greater than 8%. No profits can be distributed if the capital to monetary liability ratio is less than 5%. In fact, Madam Speaker, the government would have to inject capital if the ratio falls below 3%. So really, in effect, neither the Bank of Jamaica or the government has any discretion where the distribution of profits are concerned. Madam Speaker, I was the junior minister in the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service when the work started to establish the Bank of Jamaica as an independent institution responsible for policy directive for inflation to be in the 3 to 6% range. Madam Speaker, we have lived with relatively predictable inflation in Jamaica. And so I say to the opposition spokesman on finance, do not try to sell to Jamaicans the notion that you can simply take $1 billion from the Bank of Jamaica. We've worked too hard to achieve a relatively stable inflation environment for anyone to try to undermine that very important pillar of our economy. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, come to think of it, the opposition has zero experience managing the country in an inflation targeting environment. They've never done it. So there's a thing or two, Madam Speaker, the opposition needs to learn. Madam Speaker, so Madam Speaker, I will X out that $1 billion from the Bank of Jamaica. Yes, that's water. Madam Speaker, the maths is not mathsing. When you, Madam Speaker, when you replace recurring revenue stream, which is what the NHT contribution and the revenue measures are, when you replace those with debt, you have to keep borrowing because next year you will be in the same position. You have to find borrowed funds again to replace the recurring NHT and revenue measures, and it never stops. Obviously, you would have a choice to cut expenditure and or get additional revenues. So, Madam Speaker, to those of you who want additional clarification on what this will look like, let me give you the following example. Let's assume that the NHT contribution of 11.4 billion and the revenue measure of 18 billion are the only sources of income to government. These are recurring. This means that every year you can count on those funds going into the treasury. But the opposition spokesman on finance has said no NHT contribution and no revenue measures. In discontinuing the NHT contribution and not doing the revenue measures, I asked, where would the money come from? The opposition spokesman on finance said he would borrow. Okay, that is his desire. So the opposition spokesman on finance borrows to replace the NHT contribution and the revenue measure in the upcoming fiscal year. What happens in the next fiscal year? The opposition spokesman on finance has to borrow again because the recurrent expenditures are not going away. But this time, the spokesman on finance has to borrow more because the $2 billion that the opposition spokesman on finance never sent to Airports Authority of Jamaica because he decided to defer the construction of AHA's corporate headquarters into fiscal year 2027-28.
Mark Gwilyn is so respectful. Man, put up the phone. What's wrong with you?
They're anxious. So the opposition spokesman on finance would have to include this $2 billion in his borrowing. Madam Speaker, what happens in year 3? The opposition spokesman on finance has to borrow again, using this very simplified example, just to show you the impact of using debt to replace recurrent revenues. Madam Speaker, I am sure you get the picture, and this table shows the folly of that. So, Madam Speaker, instead of the need to borrow $29.4 billion, you're now at 31.4, and then back to 29.4, assuming no other expenses pop up on you. Madam Speaker, these are the intricacies of how numbers in one budget year relate to the numbers in another budget year. And when you lose recurrent revenues, trying to replace it with debt is a state of illusory happiness. Or false contentment based on misconception or a refusal to accept the truth of a situation. Madam Speaker, the spokesman on finance presented a case for using 19 billion in debt to replace the revenue measures in the upcoming fiscal year. I have demonstrated that you will need way more in debt because the e-invoicing and digital nomad revenue streams are not going to materialize for at least the next 2 to 3 years. Additionally, the opposition spokesman on finance would have to keep borrowing, as I demonstrated, with the recurrent expenditure as a result of not having the benefit of the contribution of NHG or the revenue measures. Madam Speaker, I'll pause on the opposition spokesman of finance and turn my attention to the leader of the opposition. Madam Speaker, on the part of the leader of the opposition, he said he identified revenues. He said, Madam Speaker, that he identified revenues of about 2% of GDP from compliance, or projected GDP for fiscal year 2026-27 is $3 trillion, $857 billion, and so 2% of that would be approximately $77 billion. If you could make the screen larger so that they could see it. So, Madam Speaker, if the opposition leader identified 77 billion of new revenues from compliance, why then would the opposition spokesman on finance need to borrow any money at all? Madam Speaker,
I dropped this in
the left hand is not coordinating with the right hand.
I dropped it,
Madam Speaker, a Prime Minister in waiting and a Finance Minister in waiting are possibly not talking. What can go so?
The bother with it, because it's fit here. Left that to Damien, and Damien word.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I now turn to what was presented by the leader of the opposition and his many promises that the Jamaican people are not likely to see fulfilled. Once again today, I will demonstrate how unhinged are the many proposals that the leader of the opposition has put forward. So, Madam Speaker, let's start out with the 77 billion of revenues. He said he could find that, all right, 77 billion. Promise number one, nutrition. Madam Speaker, the first promise number one, nutrition support to 245,000 school children every single school day. And if you assume $150 a day for 190 days for the school year, that would be 69.8 billion.
But a whole heap of money and have a got all over. They could have plugged all the way at time. Shut up your mouth.
The 77 from compliance, right? And of course, I use $150 because the child has to get breakfast, lunch, and an afternoon snack. So I couldn't give any less than that. Promise number 2, smaller classes. Very commendable. Percent more teachers, or about 9,000 teachers. That would cost $41 billion. Transportation for 20,000 students outside the JUTC range. Assume 500 per day for 190 school days. That's $1.9 billion. And
The amount of money missing from the
first
government.
in the family scholarship program. And I know when the leader of opposition said that, I looked at the MP from St. Catherine North, and you could see he was quite annoyed that the leader of opposition would be there trotting out his idea of first in the family scholarship program.
This is a joke them people are, you know?
So Madam Speaker, a bachelor's of business administration costs about $457,000 per year, and this is a real number. Approximately 32,000 babies are born annually, of which roughly 30% are born to new mothers. So if you look at the cohort born 18 years ago, they're the ones who are 18 years today. There are about 9,600 of those. And the first in the family scholarship program would be $4.4 billion.
Not everybody,
And
and if nobody not get nothing, she quote the thing wrong. Understand what I say? The first in family, so all our family not have none.
But you're going to finance them. You're going to finance them.
A foolishness here, tax flavor.
You're going to make sure they go. You are going to make sure they go. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. Okay. But Madam Speaker, it seems I touched a corn over there.
So you not say it the right way.
Promise number 5. Investing in teacher training, a very lofty goal, Madam Speaker. Currently, the Jamaica Teaching Council provides continuing professional development for teachers. So we'll add $300 million for additional spending. Promise number 6, modern learning techniques and materials for teachers. We'll add $1 billion there. $1 billion revolving loan fund.
So you make case I end up with story, because I know you did that shot
for
for
pregnant mothers, and again using the same statistics, 35,000 children born annually. That would be another 2.1.
And I can't say that when I say birth rate gone down. When I say birth rate gone down, so don't come in with that now.
One in every parish. Let's assume 350 million. Support to churches, $1 billion. This one, Madam Speaker, it's a new one. It's a new one. Promise number 11, clean slate for thousands of Jamaicans. There are 1,462 in the labor force. Madam Speaker, if you assume that they need relief of about $40,000 monthly, you're looking at $702 million, right? There were no bounds around it. It didn't say it was a 10-year program. All right. Then, of course, you would end the NHT contribution and minimum wage would transition to living wage. That is asked the PIOJ to develop this. So the deficit would be huge, Madam Speaker. Many times times the $77 billion that the opposition leader said he would find from compliance. But then now, you would have to add the $90 billion that the spokesman on finance said is going to borrow. And then the additional interest rate on top of that. Madam Speaker, the bottom line is, when you calculate the debt to GDP, where we are currently, we're projected to end fiscal year 2026-27 at 65.7%. When you add what the leader of the opposition would do when you add the cost of all his promises, we're looking at total
You can't have a leader of the opposition, leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition can say the thing you want to know. Tell me what you want to do. Tell me what you want to do. And that's what you tell me. Sick on the foolishness now.
Madam Speaker, we're moving in the wrong direction. The wrong direction, Madam Speaker. Yes. Madam Speaker,
Everything opposition say wrong.
this would
Oh,
be
no,
a
not right.
return to populism, wanton spending, and using debt to fulfill promises. We know where this took us. During their administration. I don't know about you on that side, but over here we will not go back there. Madam Speaker, both the opposition leader and the opposition spokesman and on finance said the environmental protection levy will be going to the consolidated fund. Here's what they said. The name of the tax suggests that the cash flows from it will be directed towards environmental protection, towards your coastlines or watersheds or forests, the very natural infrastructure that Melissa reminded us that we cannot afford to neglect. But the money goes into the consolidated fund, they said. None of it is ring-fenced for environmental purposes. So we have a levy collecting money in the name of the environment, but it is not dedicated to the environment. It's treated as another revenue source for the government. That's what they said. Well, Madam Speaker, the minister with responsibility for water, environment, and climate change will tell you that environmental protection levy is being pursued against the backdrop of the government's signaled intent to boost green growth to enhance climate resilience. With 5 new areas planned for declaration in the coming financial year. Jamaica is also working to establish global resolutions.
How I'm trying to say something, you know. The internet must be gone. Let me see what's going on now. Internet, guys. I don't know what happened to this one here.
My husband
didn't believe he could master the Bible in a year like pastors do.
If you want to study the Bible like a pastor but don't know where to start, and
2 billion. And going forward, on average, for the medium term, 9.1 billion will be spent each fiscal year on protection of biodiversity and landscape, pollution abatement, solid waste management, and other environmental protection
Until
activities.
the internet come back, I said, me try for him.
So the spokesman on finance simply needs to turn to page 5 in Appendix 1, and he will see the spending. By the way, Madam Speaker, reporting our budget by functional classification only started under this government, fiscal year 2016-17. And so, Madam Speaker, the spokesman on finance would not be aware of this development.
Really? Really?
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I now want to address consumption tax, SCT, on non-alcoholic sweetened beverages. February 2026. We have received feedback from a number of stakeholders, including the beverage manufacturers and importers. Madam Speaker, we are a listening government. We listened to the various representations, clearly assess them, and where they have merit, we act. I'm pleased, therefore, to advise this Honorable House of a change in the approach to the SCT on non-alcoholic sweetened beverages that will make the measure more effective and more equitable. Madam Speaker, let me be clear about the intent. The SCT on non-alcoholic sweetened beverages was conceived from the very beginning as a health measure. Its purpose is to address the burden of non-communicable disease, diabetes, obesity, hypertension, that bear down so heavily on our people and on our public health system. The original announcement of a rate of 2 cents per milliliter was made for reasons of administrative simplicity. A volumetric tax is straightforward to calculate, to collect, and to verify. However, stakeholders pointed out, and we agree, that a flat volume-based tax does not vary by sugar content, and therefore does not distinguish between a low sugar and a high sugar product. We took that concern seriously, and because health has always been the underlying intent of the measure, we have redesigned the SCT to be based We took that concern seriously, and because health has always been the underlying intent of the measure, we have redesigned the SCT to be based directly on sugar content rather than on the volume of the beverage. Madam Speaker, the special consumption tax on non-alcoholic sweetened beverage will therefore be levied at a rate of 22 cents
Then I
per
sent you
gram
to talk about the other day. How
rather
different
than
shut up
than
about
on the
again?
volume of the beverage. Madam Speaker, this change will require some lead time for manufacturers, importers, and our tax administration to prepare. As a result, the SCT will go into effect on May 1, 2026 instead of April 1, as previously announced. Madam Speaker, the logic of this design is simple and principled. It is the sugar that causes the harm, so it is the sugar that should be taxed. A beverage with no added sugar will attract no SCT. A beverage with modest added sugar will
tax
attract
upon
no
water?
modest SCT.
If you got 1 to 4 correct, you're a
Tax
chaotic
upon the water
thinker.
and so, oh,
If you
where the
got
sense of
5
that?
to 8 correct, you're an impulsive.
levied based on liters of pure alcohol. Importantly, Madam Speaker, this structure creates a genuine commercial incentive for manufacturers and importers to reduce the sugar content of their products. The lower the sugar, the lower the tax. Madam Speaker, I also want to signal clearly that this is not the end of the conversation, as we will monitor this application in practice, its effect on prices, on consumption patterns, on reformulation decisions, and on public health outcomes. We recognize that during implementation, practical questions may arise that were not anticipated in advance, and the government is committed to working through those questions in good faith. We will continue a structured dialogue with both the beverage industry and with health professionals on how this measure can be strengthened and improved over time. To manufacturers and importers, the message is straightforward. Reduce the sugar in your products and the tax burden falls. The government is not seeking to harm a sector that employs thousands of Jamaicans. We're changing the incentive structure, and we believe the industry is fully capable of responding to it. To the Jamaican public, I ask you to consider there's hardly a family in this country that has not been touched by diabetes, hypertension, or obesity. These are not distant statistics. They are our parents, our children, our siblings, our neighbors. Every lower sugar product on our shelves is a step in the right direction, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, every informed choice at the shop counter is an act of investment in your own health and in the health of this nation. This government is changing the incentives for industry and for consumers alike, because a healthier Jamaica is a more productive Jamaica. And a more productive Jamaica is the foundation of everything else we're trying to build.
They tell me for the thing with them I say make no sense there. I'm going to go and walk meantime. Watch the two bad word cuss behind. Yeah. Well, me not notice them, me not know the true. No idea.
I turn now to changes to environmental protection levy. Madam Speaker, we also received feedback on the changes announced to the environmental protection levy. I had announced that the base on which the levy is applied for manufacturers would move from 75% to 100% of sales. The manufacturers raised a legitimate concern that this change would place local manufacturers at a disadvantage relative to importers, on whom the environmental protection levy is applied to CIF value, which naturally excludes the distribution margin that is embedded in the selling price. When the 75% base for manufacturers was introduced in 2015, Madam Speaker, it was deliberately designed to put domestic producers on a level footing with importers. Madam Speaker, we're therefore retaining the 75% of sales base for manufacturers. However, Madam Speaker, to maintain revenue neutrality with the retention of the 75% manufacturers base, we'll have to increase the environmental protection levy rate modestly from 0.8% as previously announced to 0.85% for both manufacturers and importers. Madam Speaker, I want to be explicit on the fiscal position. Both of these changes have been carefully calibrated be revenue neutral. The projected yield from the consumption tax on non-alcoholic sweetened beverage and the environmental protection levy remains as previously announced. Madam Speaker, we met with the beverage manufacturers. They've asked us to go to the tiered approach, which we're not opposed. And the Ministry of Health and Wellness prefers the tiered approach. In the course of the year, we will continue the working group, which consists of Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, and the manufacturers to work towards the tiered system, where we will begin with the simple application that targets grams. We will have a standard, well, I just announced standard rate per gram of sugar. And so, Madam Speaker, I want to highlight that in keeping with this administration leadership style, we listen intently to the industry. Madam Speaker, in closing this fiscal 2026-27 budget debate, I choose to reiterate that history will only repeat itself should the opposition have a chance to implement their recommendations without concern for whether or not they're being funded. There's no way that Jamaica today can return to the Jamaica of the run with it policy. And the wanton abandonment of fiscal responsibility characteristics of their style of government. Why else would they trot out again this year the raft of promises that cannot be fully funded? It is apparent that there is blatant disregard for the steady hand with which we have led and the diligence and stability that we have sought to create. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister demonstrated the massive reconstruction opportunities that will become available to Jamaicans and the vision of a resurgent Jamaica. As I said at the beginning of my speech, the cornerstones to move us from resilience to resurgence have been set and driven by the builder himself, Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Jamaicans can expect a new and different Jamaica to unfold over the next 3 to 5 years, right before our very eyes. Madam Speaker, I confirm that this budget that has been presented is designed to build a caring economy, a compassionate economy, one that improves lives and creates a stronger and more resilient nation by God's grace. So, Madam Speaker, I say from the bottom of my heart, God bless Jamaica, land we love.
Waste of time. Waste of time. Waste of time. Waste of time. One bag of waste of time. And tell me what she said since there. Now what them kind of drama you see?
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I ask for the bill to be read a second time.
Thank you. The question is that the appropriations bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Clerk?
A bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2027 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament be read a second time.
Thank you. The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Marshall. Minister of Finance, members, we are now in committee, Standing Finance Committee. Minister, how would you like to proceed?
For the clauses, Madam Speaker.
Members, I put clause 1. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I put clause 2. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I put clause 3. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I put the schedule, sections 2 and 3. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with no amendments. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Thank you, Marshall. We're back in the House. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Minister?
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the bill be read a third time.
Thank you. The question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Clerk?
An act to apply a sum out of the consolidated fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2027 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament is read a third time and passed.
House Leader?
Madam Speaker, let me again thank the Minister of Finance for masterful closing of
Masterful? What kind of masterful closing?
the budget debate,
Not real
setting the record straight and showing us reality from fantasy. Madam Speaker, as we are in public business, we had tabled on the 10th day of March the Civil Service Establishment General Order was laid on the House and notice given for its affirmation. Today we will take that order, and as such I ask that you turn back over to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance? You may commence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In accordance with the Civil Service Establishment Act, in accordance with the Civil Service Establishment Act 1976, the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2026 has been prepared and is presented to indicate changes to the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2024. The Civil Service Establishment General Order 2026 outlines the reorganization of ministries and departments and consequently the creation of new posts, abolition of posts, and the reclassification, upgrading, and recycling of existing posts. The major changes are to be effected in the General Order 2026 and include the integration of the National Council on Drug Abuse into the Ministry of Health and Wellness as a department. This action follows Cabinet Decision number 18/21 and 33/17, which granted approval and the subsequent passage of the National Council on Drug Abuse Repeal Act 2023 number 15, which legally transferred the National Council on Drug Abuse, legally transferred those functions to the ministry responsible for health and restructured it as a department within the ministry. The key drivers for this integration are an expanded mandate for the National Council on Drug Abuse, now encompassing responsibility for national mental health prevention strategies and harm reduction, in addition to its traditional focus on drug abuse education and prevention. Madam Speaker, the recognition that the existing National Council on Drug Abuse structure as a statutory body was inadequate and no longer fit for purpose to effectively realize this new broader mandate, especially considering the increased prevalence and accessibility of drugs. Madam Speaker, the need for a new organizational design to accommodate the expanded roles, responsibilities, and a new governance context where management reports to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Health and Wellness instead of a board. It's also a strategic shift towards a more proactive and preventative approach in substance abuse and mental wellness. Madam Speaker, this integration involves establishing 306 posts and creating several new branches. For example, strategic planning, research, prevention/education/treatment. There's also retitling.
Ladies over 180 pounds, start your 7-minute indoor walking routine for cortisol detox. In 1 week, you'll feel better. In 2 weeks, you'll look better. In 4 weeks, your besties won't believe your results. Watch our transformation from size 20 to size 12 within an hour. Walking, this is what weight loss walking looks like at home. Several months ago we started this walking challenge. Walk for just 7 minutes daily. Our body's home and our stamina improves. Calculate how long it takes to lose 42 pounds with walking.
I can't wait to see what awesome pet is inside this egg. Do you know the answer? Click here to answer and hatch your own pet on Adapted Mind.
Correct.
We hatched the pet. Come in.
Internal controls, streamline examination and assessment processes, enhance infrastructure maintenance oversight, and better align the ministry structure with its operational needs and strategic mandates. These combined Ministry of Education initiatives involve establishing 106 posts, including the regularization of 9 temporary posts, upgrading 38 posts, reclassifying 38 posts, retitling 86 posts, abolishing 1 post when vacant. Madam Speaker, there was also the establishment of 102 posts within the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the JCF, to enhance ICT capabilities, improve organizational efficiency, and support technological advances like Jamaica Eye and the Station Records Management System, addressing staffing needs in critical technical areas. Madam Speaker, there was also the abolition of 1,250 vacant posts from the central government vestige of the Tax Administration Directorate. The general amendment reflects changes in 3 areas. Part 1. This section shows changes in the complement of posts in ministries and departments. It reflects changes in posts, for example, reclassification of posts, new posts created, retitling of posts, upgrading of posts, and the effective dates for these changes. The breakdown is as follows. 1,481 posts were created. 299 posts were upgraded. 221 posts were reclassified. 645 posts were retitled. 1 post was regraded. 6 posts were reinstated. Madam Speaker, in part 2 of the book, this section shows the revision of salaries for the 2022 through to the 2026 contract period, consequent on the heads of agreements signed between the Government of Jamaica, various unions, and the bargaining groups. Part 3, Madam Speaker, abolitions. This section shows the abolition of 1,325 posts from the establishment of several ministries and departments. Madam Speaker, the affirmative resolution is therefore sought for the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2026. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Could you turn on your mic, Minister? Asking if you could now move the motion, notice of which you had given.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion, notice of which was given on the 10th day of March 2026, be approved.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the question is that the motion, notice of which was given on the 10th day of March 2026, be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of motions, notice of motions given orally.
The question is that we recommit notices of motions given orally. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the pensions, superannuation funds, and retirement schemes, registration, licensing, and reporting amendment regulations 2026 resolution. Whereas Section 58(1) of the Pension, Superannuation Funds, and Retirement Schemes Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Financial Services Commission may, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations for such matters as may be necessary or expedient for the purposes of the Act. And whereas on the 11th day of March 2026, the Financial Services Commission, with the approval of the Minister, made the Pension, Superannuation Funds, and Retirement Scheme Registration, Licensing, and Reporting Amendment Regulation 2026, and whereas Section 58(2) of the Act provides that regulations made under Section 58(10) shall be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas it is desirable that the Pension Superannuation Fund and Retirement Schemes Registration, Licensing and Reporting Amendment Regulations 2026 be affirmed. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honorable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the Pension Superannuation Funds and Retirement Schemes Registration, Licensing and Reporting Amendment Regulations 2026 Resolution. The Pension Superannuation Funds and Retirement Schemes Registration, Licensing and Reporting Amendment Regulation 2026, which was laid on the table of the House on the 24th day of March 2026 is hereby affirmed.
Minister.
Sure. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that the Insurance Amendment of 20th Schedule Regulation 2026, which was laid on the table of the House on the 24th day of March 2026, be referred to the Regulations Committee of the House for consideration and report. And Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the Conch Export Levy Rate of Levy Order 2026 Resolution. Whereas Section 31C2 of the Conch Export Levy Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Minister may, from time to time, by order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, prescribe the rate of levy to be paid to the Veterinary Services Division by exporters for any conch season after the 2010 conch season. And whereas on the 12th day of March 2026, the Minister made the conch export levy rate of levy order 2026, and whereas it is desirable that the conch export levy rate of levy order 2026 be affirmed, now therefore be resolved by this Honorable House as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the conch export levy rate of levy order 2026 resolution. 2. The conch export levy rate of levy order 2026, which was laid on the table of the House on the 24th day of March 2026, is affirmed. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you, House Leader. We continue in public business. House Leader. Minister of Finance will go first.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that the insurance amendment of, no, sorry.
So hold a moment, please.
Oh, sorry. Madam Speaker.
House Leader, in the interim, would you be so kind as to
No, tired yet?
public business in the order?
No, not you.
We'll go back to Minister of Finance, please.
There, watch your foolish budget. It don't make no sense.
Madam Speaker, I now
My
move for the
budget
suspension of
repair.
standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier today.
The question is, we suspend the standing orders to allow for the minister's motion. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, this Honorable House should note that the Conch Export Levy Act was passed in 2009 with its main purpose to facilitate the imposition of a levy to be paid on each pound of conch exported during each conch season pursuant to Section 3 of the Act. Section Section 9 of the Act, which established the Fisheries Management Development Fund, the fund mandates that all the proceeds of the levy collected are to be allocated to the fund to facilitate the sustainable management and development of the fisheries sector. Section 11 of the Act stipulates that any exporter who fails to pay the levy commits an offense and is liable to summary conviction in a parish court to a fine equivalent to 5 times the value of the unpaid amount of the levy, or $3 million, whichever is greater, and in default of payment, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 12 months. Section 12 of the Act provides for the unpaid levy to be recovered summarily by the Commissioner without limit to the amount as a civil debt in a parish court at the suit of the Attorney General. Madam Speaker, for this conch season, I have decided not to increase the rate of levy currently charged. Therefore, the rate of 50 cents in the currency of the United States of America, or its Jamaican equivalent, per pound of conch exported remains in place for the 2026 conch season. In exercise of the power conferred upon me as Minister and pursuant to Section 31C2 of the Act, on March 12, 2026, I made the order for an exporter to pay a levy at the rate of 50 US cents, or its Jamaican equivalent, to the Veterinary Services Division for each pound of conch exported during the 2026 conch season. The object of the order pursuant to Section 3 of the Act is to legally require a person who proposes to export or who exports conch to pay to the Veterinary Services Division a levy of 50 cents in the currency of the United States of America, or the equivalent in Jamaican currency, for each pound of conch exported during the 2026 conch season. In the circumstances, Madam Speaker, and as I indicated, there is no intention to increase the levy, as I think all members of the House can understand. With the passage of Hurricane Melissa, a number of our industrial officials would have suffered significant damage, and as such, given the matters highlighted above, I ask this Honourable House for its support in affirming by resolution the conch export levy, rate of levy, Order 2026.
Thank you. Thank you, House Leader. The member from Clarendon, Northwest? From Westmoreland. From Westmoreland Central it is.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am called a home now. I will not be moving anymore.
Afterwards, it will be. You have a mic on it.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. In relation to this matter.
Member Campbell, turn your mic on again, please. Thanks. And then Member Jackson, turn yours on. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In relation to this matter, I just have a few queries. The minister phrased it to say that he would not be increasing the levy this year based on the impact of Hurricane Melissa. I'm just wondering though if there was consideration that you could waive it or that you could decrease it to give them an opportunity to recover. The folks in Westmoreland and in St. Elizabeth suffered severe damage. There's one particular proprietor that operates in both your constituency and my minister, and he suffered significant damage to his facility, and I'm sure it would be significant if he could get a waiver or a deferral, or even in the event where they make the payment after selling the cow, because it must be one of the only industries where we actually charge persons to export the items, right? A selected few, at least, that we actually charge persons to export. So if you give them a quota for, say, 100,000 pounds of coffee, you have to come up with 50,000 US. Because that's what it represents, 50 cents per pound. So if they get the quota for 100,000 pounds of coke to export, they have to come up front with 1,000, which seems a little bit, especially under the circumstances, it seems a little bit onerous to those persons who are participating in the industry. And I do believe that we are one of the few countries that has MSC certification for coke, and therefore, based on that, we should allow persons who
I'm
participate
tired.
in the industry
Boring.
to be able to earn sufficiently so that they can support their families. So those are my few comments. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, member from Westmoreland Eastern, member from St. Catherine South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, just two short questions. Could you indicate what the annual volume is like for our export? And secondly, can you comment on whether or not there is any incursion of the reaping of conch in Jamaica?
The school bus. Look at the school. You know, if you never write to the Auditor General, he would get.
Thank you, members. I will start with Member Jackson, member from St. Catherine. So, based on the interventions of the government with the procurement of vessels to support the work of the JDF Coast Guard, we have seen much less in terms of incursion. I won't tell you that it's wiped out, but significant reduction. In fact, the first thing that put out the new vessel, they caught people. And this was years ago now. We have since that time more than doubled the fleet that is out there.
And it doesn't matter.
A much significant decrease in those incursions, and it is also showing in terms of the population of conch that we have out there, which has allowed us to increase the quota over the last 2 years. So I think we're now at 300 metric tons for the export amount. I will double check just to ensure I have yeah. Yes, our main market is the EU. Our main market continues to be the EU. And just to say, we are taking steps to go into value addition, right? So we're not, as you would have heard, we are now the only MSC certified wild-caught conch in the entire world. And why that is something for us to celebrate, you may remember that a few years ago, we shut down our conch industry because our numbers were not sufficient. And we managed that for 2 years. And we worked with the industry to ensure that when we went back in, we were top of the class in terms of sustainability. So now Jamaica is the only country in the world that has a wild-caught conch that is MSC certified, which is something very, very significant. The opposition spokesperson on agriculture, just a couple things. So, in relation to the maintenance of the levy at this rate is actually a reduced rate, right? So when we had come back after the 2-year, you see me love my food and my ketchup run the flavor in so many ways. Mr. Thomas. This year, because we had to maintain it because of Hurricane Beryl.
I don't know where to go. Good evening.
That we have some resources because to maintain our MSC certification, we have to do things like annual conch surveys, and it costs, right? So we still have to maintain some influence. However, we are taking steps to treat with what you have said, and you will see that probably next week we will bring a bill to Parliament that gives the minister the power to waive or to accept a partial payment or payment in installments so that people will be able to export and not have to pay all of the sales. So we've already done that work. In fact, we moved, yeah, we moved to do that. I moved to that as minister when we had Hurricane Barry and recognized that legally we did not have the power to so do. So we have gone through the legislative process. Cabinet has already approved the legislation, and I expect it will be before the House. The next time we sit, it will be before the House. So that will treat with that and give us the ability to work with those issues. Just to say as well, and I will highlight it when I do make my presentation, my substantive presentation. But just to say, we have been rolling out a package of direct support to a number of those fishers, not just our small artisanal fishers, but also those intermediate fishers and the industrial fishers. And the package of support starts from about 200,000, but most of the intermediate fishers have gotten between 1 million to 3 million in direct grant. And most of the industrial fishers have gotten between 3 million to 5 million in direct grants to help them to start again, seeing that they suffered so much damage. With that said, Madam Speaker, I ask that the motion be approved.
House, the question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister of Finance?
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing order to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to allow the minister to take the motion, notice of which was given earlier. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the motion be approved.
Members, the question is that the motion, notice of which was given earlier, be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader? No, it wasn't.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today, and as such, I ask that the House be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Members, we are in receipt of communication in respect of the National Blood Drive. I'm just putting out to the members, this is preliminarily, that there will be an exercise conducted, and we are encouraging all members to at least put yourself up for screening to see if you're able to contribute to giving blood. As we encourage all Jamaicans to give blood where they can so that it saves lives, we will, many of us, be encouraging Jamaicans by us setting the example in the House. So, Minister of State and the Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness has been given charge by the lead minister, Minister Tufton, and you will see her conversing with you. Please let her know your willingness and your intent to partake in the blood drive once the screening is ready. Thanks, members. As said by the House Leader, there will be no further business for today. I ask that this House adjourn. Members, those in favor? Not yet. Not yet. Members, this honorable House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
people, that's it. Till later. I want to think. I want myself a good opal. I want myself a good evening. That's it for now, guys. Bye.